7.7 lakh. That's how many Indian students went abroad to study last year. It was a 6-year high, also a 68% rise since 2021. There is no denying that these numbers are big, and they're not surprising either. The aspiration of studying abroad is ubiquitous in India. Whether we like it or not, it's a lifelong dream for millions. Many Indian families want to send their children to foreign colleges, and for this they make huge sacrifices sometimes. Many take big loans. Some even mortgage their homes or take loans against family jewelry because they see foreign education as a worthwhile investment. But what's the return on this investment? Well, that varies and conditions apply. In the best case scenario, the students find jobs abroad and do well. In the worst case, they don't even find the college seat they paid for. And that's happening to some Indian students in Canada. And we'll come to that. But let me also first tell you about a third scenario. They finish their education abroad, they return to India, but they don't find a job here. I'll show you the numbers. This is between 2015 and 2019. Only 22% of the students who studied abroad and returned to India were able to secure a job. So almost 80% of those students who returned could not even land a job. So foreign education can be a tricky investment. Which brings me to the story from Canada. Hundreds of Indian students have been left in the lurch. They began their overseas degrees in 2017 and 2018. By March this year, many of them had graduated. Some even got work permits. So they applied for permanent residency in Canada to become legal residents in the country, in Canada, and to work there. But instead of residency, they got letters of deportation. Do you know why? Because their college acceptance letters were fake. They may not have been aware of this, but all this while they were illegal immigrants in Canada. What do you think happened here? The students had been scammed. They'd fallen prey to a fraudulent education counselor in Punjab. They were given fake admission letters in exchange for exorbitant fees. The students said they were wronged, so they protested for days. And now they've finally received temporary relief. The government of Canada has decided to not deport the Indian students just yet.
International students who are genuine applicants that came to Canada to study and were victimized by fraudsters will be given permission to remain in Canada. Those who were complicit in a fraudulent scheme will be held accountable for their actions and will bear the full consequences of Canadian law for their illicit behavior.
A task force has been formed to look into each case. So some students may get relief, but this episode highlights a much larger problem, a big crack in the system. It wasn't just the students who were fooled. It was also the visa officials and the Border Services Agency. And this may be a big conspiracy, but it's not a unique one. Such scams are more common than you would imagine. So-called education counselors routinely lure students abroad. They charge a hefty fee worth tens of thousands of dollars, and in return, they offer fake papers in substandard colleges. And yet students approach them. They want to take the risk. Why do you think that happens? For multiple reasons. There is no dearth of world-class education in India, but getting admission is tough. India's top universities are excruciatingly competitive. Cut-off entry marks easily hit 99%. So what happens to the other students? Where do they go? In some cases, education is not even the primary goal. A foreign degree is seen as a pathway to migration. And you can blame India's job market for that. Unemployment topped 8% in the month of April in India. Graduate unemployment is even higher, about 18%. A study says 83% of Indian students believe an overseas degree will give them an edge, that it will enhance their prospects for securing a better job. So today, Indian students study across the world, Canada, Australia, the UK, the US, and these are their top choices. And Canada ranks first because it's also the cheapest of these. The quality of education is comparable, there is no language barrier, and tuition fee is lower than other Western players. So Indian students flock to Canada, and fraudulent agencies exploit some of them. As we track this latest case, we do hope it serves as an eye-opener for others who plan to apply. What's the most important economic grouping in the world? Would you say the G20? A group of 19 countries and the European Union. It represents almost all major economies in the world. But does it represent changing world realities? What about the G7? It's an old, rich nations club representing the global north, but no India, no China, no Russia. So can it really be called important in today's global landscape? Then we have BRICS, a group that represents over a quarter of the world's GDP, more than 40% of the world's population. Its members are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, more countries want to join. Egypt has formally applied. Others from Asia, Africa, and Latin America are also in the queue. But now there's been a surprising knock on the BRICS door. France. President Emmanuel Macron wants a slice of the action. He wants an invite to the upcoming BRICS summit in South Africa in August. Here's why.
Does France want to join BRICS? Is Paris sending its love to the Organization of Developing Nations? Is this a sign that BRICS is entering the big leagues? While it's possible, it's still too soon to be sure. Here's what we know for certain. Yesterday, French media reported that Emmanuel Macron had a request. He wanted South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to invite him to the upcoming BRICS summit. The 15th annual BRICS summit is taking place between the 22nd and 24th of August. It's being held in the South African city of Johannesburg. Leaders from the 5 BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, will be present. We're talking about presidents and prime ministers. Along with these 5 nations, there will be other guests, the Friends of BRICS as they're called. Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Indonesia have all been invited, as have some other nations. Many are hopeful about becoming members. Reports say some 14 countries have applied to join the grouping. The latest application is from Egypt, and some Egyptian corporations are excited by the prospect.
It's absolutely one of the main assets that we can take advantage of by joining BRICS and by joining the new development bank. We need to facilitate our trade, whether in import and export. And one of the things that hinders this supply chain and this process is the availability of foreign currency.
Egypt may have a leg up on the competition when it comes to joining BRICS. You see, the BRICS nations have a bank, the New Development Bank, headquartered in Shanghai. There are 4 non-BRICS members: Bangladesh, Egypt, the UAE, and Uruguay. Bangladesh expects to be given membership in August. Egypt will be hoping for it too. It'll mark a new phase in BRICS. So far, the group has only allowed 1 country to join after its formation, South Africa, which joined in 2011. BRICS doesn't really have a proper mechanism to induct new members, but they're working on it.
Looking at institutional development of BRICS or expansion, we have concluded that we haven't as yet got what we believe is a useful document that we could place before the heads of state. So more work will need to be done on this matter. It is still to be processed, and once we have a document that we believe offers clear guidance, we will then take that to the summit in August.
And the group does seem keen to expand, especially in light of the war in Ukraine and the resultant sanctions on Russia. BRICS member countries want to get together and find a common currency they can trade in, find a way to bypass the US dollar. That's part of what's fueling the expansion. Another reason is the need for economic development. While the West is focusing on the war, the eradication of poverty seems to have been left by the wayside.
I believe the enlargement of the BRICS will be beneficial to the BRICS countries, beneficial to developing countries, and to increase the representation influence of this mechanism, and also to garner bigger power of the BRICS to serve the interests of developing countries and emerging market economies, as well as the international development cause.
China is definitely pushing for the expansion of BRICS. It's another way that Beijing can increase its global footprint, another forum where China can help steer the agenda. Which brings us back to France. Macron went to China in April. He wanted Europe to follow a course independent of the US. He wanted to maintain good relations with Beijing, especially when it came to trade. Is the BRICS summit just another platform for Macron to peddle his politics? Or is it something even more underhanded? Russia has asked France to explain Macron's invite. Moscow asked if it's some sort of Trojan horse move. While we wait for the reply from Paris, one thing is certain. BRICS is increasingly becoming a crucial platform on the world stage.
Meanwhile, in Lebanon, the economy is collapsing and the politics is making it worse. This is a country of about 5 million people located in West Asia, and it's facing a major crisis. Lebanon does not have a president. It doesn't even have a proper government. Not for want of trying, though, because the lawmakers have tried repeatedly. Yesterday, they made their 12th attempt and failed. I'll repeat that. They could not appoint a president after 12 attempts. It's been 7.5 months of utter chaos. The country is running on autopilot and it's heading straight towards a crash. Our next report has the details.
There was yet another standoff in the Lebanese parliament yesterday, a vote to select the president. Sadly, this wasn't any pivotal moment. It has become all too common. This was the 12th attempt to select a president. The 12th vote in 7.5 months.
Jihad Azour
And just like the 11 times before this, the vote failed once again. Before we get into why, let's look at the contenders. One candidate was Suleiman Frange. He's the grandson of a former president with whom he shares his name. He also served as Lebanon's Minister of Interior and Municipalities between 2004 and 2005. His opponent was Jihad Azour. He's a former finance minister of Lebanon, having served in the role from 2005 to 2008. He's also an alumni of the International Monetary Fund. He became the IMF Director of the Middle East and Central Asia Department in 2017. Azour seems to check the boxes when it comes to becoming Lebanon's president. He's an economic expert, and that's essential when considering the crisis consuming Lebanon. The country's economy has been crumbling since 2019. The exchange rate used to be about 1,500 Lebanese pounds to the dollar. Today, that rate is over 15,000 pounds to the dollar, a tenfold decrease in value. But this isn't the only problem. In 2020, an explosion ripped through the main port in Lebanon's capital, Beirut. Over 200 people died and more than 300,000 were left homeless. Damages amounted to billions of dollars. Between all this and the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine, Lebanon lies at the brink of collapse. So you'd think the politicians would get on with it and select a president. Either the political family's scion or the economic expert. Anything would be better than the present stalemate, right? Not quite. This brings us to why Lebanon faces its power vacuum. Politics. Lebanon's parliament is divided. The group calling the shots seems to be Hezbollah. It has been designated a terrorist organization by a lot of countries, but is backed by Iran. And it's a strong political party in Lebanon. Hezbollah dislikes the economist candidate Jihad Azour. Hezbollah and its allies voted for Suleiman Frange. Almost everyone else wanted Azour. This was the result.
Suleiman Frange 51, Jihad Azour 59, Ziad Baroud 6, New Lebanon 8, Empty Ballot 1, Joseph Aoun 1, Annulled Paper 1. Total would be 127. There is one missing paper.
The economist was ahead by 8 votes. A second round was supposed to be held. In the second round, Azour would have needed just 6 extra votes. If he hit 65, Azour would have become president. But that wasn't to be. Hezbollah and its allies staged a walkout. That meant Lebanon's parliament fell short of the minimum number of lawmakers needed to initiate a vote, leading to the 12th attempt to choose a president also failing. This has become such a routine affair that no one was surprised.
Of course, we knew this is how the session would go, since it was called for and they wanted to go ahead with it. They did not postpone it, but of course with no result. We were sure that more than 50% or 70%, we knew there will be no precedent. They will agree on a third candidate. There is no other way.
We are tired and no one is able to change anything. They either don't know how to change anything or they don't have the intention to. But the result is one. Lebanon and the Lebanese are the biggest losers.
She says Lebanon and the Lebanese are the biggest losers, a country and its people without leadership, heading for an economic collapse and more misery.
Can one person make a difference? It's not some philosophical question. I mean it. We live in the era of mega celebrities. It's not like before, when information took weeks to filter down. You tweet and the world knows instantly. So yes, one person can make a big difference nowadays. The question is how big? Let's look at some recent examples. You've probably heard about Lionel Messi's big move. He's quit the French club PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. He's now going to play for Inter Miami in the United States. And this move has arguably changed American football. Inter Miami had 1 million Instagram followers before Messi. Now, more than 8 million. Ticket prices are also through the roof. Before Messi, the cheapest ticket was around $29. In 24 hours, that shot up to $329. That's a 1,000% rise in prices. The biggest increase was for Miami's match against New York. If all goes to plan, it will be Messi's first game in the Big Apple. Guess how much those tickets are going for? More than $450. A 1,200% rise in prices. And this is all down to one player joining the club. Let's also look at the merchandise. Reports say Adidas will sell 2 million Miami jerseys this year. The club will get $45 million from that. Fun fact, $45 million is 2 times their annual revenue. Imagine that. All of this is happening before Messi set foot in Miami. You can guess what will happen afterwards. But Messi is not alone. Another star is shaking the economy in Sweden. Beyoncé held a concert there in the month of May. Around 46,000 people attended the event. She's now being blamed for the country's stubborn inflation. It was 10.5% in April. In the month of May, it actually came down to 9.7%. But economists noted something strange. Food and electricity prices had fallen last month, but hotel and restaurant bills went up. The reason? Beyoncé, apparently. Hotel rates were jacked up due to the demand from concert goers. This economist has even done the math. He says Beyoncé raised the inflation by 0.2 to 0.3%. I can give you more such examples. Michael Jordan, the NBA legend. He has an exclusive deal with Nike. You may have heard about their Air Jordan line of shoes. Air Jordan sales are around $5 billion. Nike's total footwear sales around $30 billion. So 16% of the revenue comes from one athlete's brand, and that too a retired athlete. What do these examples tell you? Brand value is the most important currency today. It's not just quality that sells, it's also association with big names. And athletes know this. Just look at David Beckham, arguably one of the most famous footballers. He keeps minting money even after retirement. How does he do it? By using his brand. Qatar roped him in to endorse the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Guess how much they paid him? $177 million. Today's deals are not just about salaries and one-time payments. It's much more complicated than that. Let's stick to Beckham. Like Messi, he joined a US club in 2007. His contract had an interesting clause. Beckham could purchase a new US football club for $25 million. He used that clause in the year 2014, and that team is Inter Miami. Guess how much it's worth today? More than $600 million. Messi's deal is also set to include clauses like this one. He could get revenue from jersey sales, also from Apple TV, which streams football in the US. Like I said, it's not just wages and salaries anymore, it's a cocktail of things. But all of it boils down to brand. Not every footballer can set terms like Messi or Beckham. Not every singer can jack up prices like Beyoncé. It has to be matched by pedigree and popularity. It also means more responsibility. If they can shake economies, you can imagine their control over fans. It's important for these figures to set the right example, to talk about the right causes. If not, people will remember their contracts, but not their contribution. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with India. A fire broke out at an educational institute in the national capital, New Delhi. Students climbed down the building using wires. Meanwhile, an overcrowded migrant boat capsized and sank near a coastal town of Greece. At least 79 people drowned. Some migrants were rescued by helicopter. And in Peru, a 3,000-year-old mummy has been found. Archaeologists say this could be a case of human sacrifice. Finally, what makes the 15th of June significant? We're taking you back in history. On this day in 2001, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or the SCO, was founded. It was a successor of Shanghai 5, which was founded in 1996. The aim of the SCO was to focus on regional security issues. India became an observer in 2005 and a full member in 2017. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Aquí ya me dio uno. Está bastante erosionado, ¿no?